van Hoorebeeck. Loïc, sorry if my pronunciation is not correct. So let me give a bio. Loïc received a master's degree in applied math from UC Louvain in 2018. He's currently doing a PhD at UC Louvain under the supervision of Papavasiliou and Pierre-Antoine Absil. His research interest includes non-convex and non-smooth optimization, optimization of manifolds, and probabilistic forecasting. Loïc will give a presentation on global solution to economic dispatch with 12-point effects and transmission constraints. Well, Loïc's presentation will be through video, so I have to share my screen first. Yeah. And then open the video.
Hello, everyone.
Okay. Could you please confirm that you hear the voice is clear? One of the speakers.
For being remotely.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's okay.
Yes, I can hear it.
Okay. Okay. So I broadcast that.
Here for this presentation about economic dispatch with 12-point effects. So my name is Loïc van Hoorebeeck. So first, let's start with a quick motivation about the study of gas energy, because today we are talking a lot about renewable integration, and it could be a bit surprising to see a study about gas energy, which is a fossil fuel energy. And so the idea here is to look at the European targets from the European Commission Communication Energy of 2020. And you can see here on the left figure, so you have on the yellow dots, which is the current percentage of each energy in the power mix. So we have more or less 10% of renewable energy sources, such as PV or wind. We have 25% of gas, we have some nuclear, a lot of oil, and some solid fuels. So this is the yellow square. And the other color is the forecast for 2030. And you can see that the European Commission wants to push up the renewable energy and push down the oil, nuclear, and solid fuels. But the gas energy remains more or less the same. And even for 2050, where they plan to have at least 40% and up to 60% renewable energy sources, we still have a high importance of gas energy. And the reason of that is because renewable energy sources are introduces uncertainties on the production side, and so we need, as it is said here, we need a backup fuel for the variable electricity generation, and this backup fuel is in fact the gas. So the outline is the following. We'll first introduce formally the problem statement and give the equation of the optimization problem. Then I will explain two methods, the exact and inexact method and some heuristic. We'll talk a little bit about the convergence analysis and study two different study cases, and then finish with a conclusion. So let's start with the problem statement. So what are data? We have a set of bus nodes and a set of lines, capital K. We have some load demands at each node and for each time t, with capital T time. We have a set of producers, capital G, with cost function fg, some ramp constraint data, and some max flow constraints. And our decision variables are the production peak GT of generator G at time t and the flow EKT in line K at time t. And in natural language, the problem is how to optimally dispatch the power between the producers. So let's look at the problem in a mathematical form. So we want, of course, to minimize the fuel cost. So the sum over each unit G and time T of the production of peak GT. And we have as constraint the power ranges. We also have a flow conservation. we have the RAM constraint, which couples the production between two different time t and t minus 1. And finally, we have the flow constraint. So let's focus just a minute on the objective function. So here we want to take into account the valve point effect, which is a natural characteristic of multi-valve gas turbine, multi-valve gas power plant. And the idea is at some point when we open a new valve, the throttling losses suddenly increases, and that gives us a discontinuity of the derivative here. And so we have that kind of ripple-like curve, which is more difficult to tackle than a usual smooth quadratic one, because the function is non-smooth and non-convex. And mathematically, we model it as a smooth part, FGQ, and a non-smooth part with a rectifying sign here. So let's look at the method to solve this problem, because we have seen here that the feasible set is quite easy because it's only linear constraints, so it's a polyhedron, but the difficulty comes from those functions which are non-smooth and non-convex, and so we cannot use the usual traditional methods from convex optimization. So let's look at first exact method, which we presented at PES last year. And so the idea is the following. First, I will write the original problem in a very compact way, which is the following. I call it P, and we want to minimize X. So X is the production and the flow, E, over the omega. Omega is our domain, and we want to minimize the sum here of the variable, of the cost function. And so, as I said, the feasible set is a polyhedron. We have a non-convex and non-smooth function, and I write the solution X star. And then I will define a surrogate problem, which is in fact a relaxation of the original problem P. But the relaxation is not in the feasible set. The feasible set remains the same, but the objective function here will be an under-approximation. And how we do that? You can see here on the slide, we have in blue the real function, and we define a set of points in red, and the linear interpolation of this point is our function, which is an under-approximation function H. So what's our algorithm? The idea is the following. We start and we initialize a set of nodes. Then we solve the surrogate problem, so the problem defined with the objective function, the surrogate objective function H. And then we check the tolerance. So basically here, I find this solution here, the purple square, but this solution is feasible for the main problem, so I can compute the real objective and then find the gap here between both. And this gap, I call it delta. If the gap is small enough, then I won, I can terminate the algorithm. But if the gap is too large, I want to iterate. I want to refine my approximation. And the way we do that is in an adaptive way, by adding that point to the set of nodes and run again the algorithm. So that's here the feedback loop. We add the point here to the set of nodes. And in this way, you can see that we will converge to the exact solution. So let's look at how the algorithm works in practice. So we find a point, we add it, another one, etc. And you can see that there are some parts of the function where the approximation is very, very good. Maybe that's because there are interesting points there, and other points the approximation is very rough, and that allows us to have a number of integer variables which is not too large. So just a little word about the theoretical guarantees. First, we can show that the difference between the kth iterate and the objective function of the optimal solution can be bound between those two quantities. Delta is what I explained before, and gamma is in fact the error of the MIP solver that we use. And in fact, we have a theorem that shows that that delta goes to 0. And here there is a very small example. We see that delta goes to 0, but in fact the problem is gamma does not change. And so the idea is that maybe we should not focus only on delta and try to focus also on gamma, and that's the idea of the heuristic we will develop hereafter. So let's look at the heuristic. So the heuristic works in the following way. First, we run the previous algorithm that's called APLA, but with a limited number of iterations, typically 1 or 2. And we modify it such that it returns a list Li of the best incubants that it finds. And then what we've done is we're gonna iterate through this list, and for each item x tilde I, we solve the problem on a restricted domain around that item. And I will explain in a minute how we compute this restricted domain. And then we check the tolerance and we iterate through the whole loop. And it should be noted that during the first step here, we made an optimization on the whole domain. So we will have a lower bound along with a solution. But then here we cannot improve this lower bound. We only improve the solution. So let's just look at the domain restriction. The idea is let's x tilde I be one element of this list. The domain restriction will be by simply changing the power ranges. So here, before we could go everywhere on the domain, and now we can only go to the small band, which is defined by the two closest points. And so this problem is much easier, as I said before. For instance, here, in fact, I can define this domain without integer variables, and the problem becomes a very easy LP. But of course, the global solution may lie outside the allowable area, and the lower bound will not be a valid lower bound for the true problem. And in fact, I will consider two different flavors of the heuristic. The first one only limit to one segment, and here we have a multi-intervals support with up to 3 intervals. So let's look at small convergence analysis. We can bound the optimality gap, so the gap between the solution we are currently with the optimal solution, as 3 different quantity. The first one is the objective value at the current iterate, and here we have in fact the lower bound that we obtained in the blue box here. And so we have the solver tolerance here and the surrogate function at the last iterate of the blue box. So here we have no convergence guarantee, because once we reach the end loop, the lower bound here cannot be changed. Just quickly, we can try to have also an expression in terms of delta, as we had in the previous slide, and with a small trick, and by defining this quantity zeta I as the gap, as the difference between the optimal solution of the restricted problem and the optimal solution, then we can say that that bound here is bounded with this delta and zeta I here. That guy is very small because we solved the problem to optimality, and in fact we can use the same theorem as before to prove that that guy goes to 0. So at the end of the day we have only the zeta I. Small comparison between the exact method and the heuristic. We have here gamma k, and here we have psi I. We have our theorem, and you can see visually how it looks. So let's look quickly at some study cases. I will look at 57, 118 bus systems, but we want to have some VPE generators, so we add them. We add 10 generators to both cases, and the question is where to add them. And we do it in we do 100 randomly independent trials. So in fact, we have 200 study cases. And if we look at the solution here on the left, we have the execution time, and you can see that both heuristic outperform the APLA by significant number of time. And you can see here we have box plot because we have 100 trials here, 100 trials there. But if we look at the optimality gap of Apply is slightly better than the other one, but it is, more or less the same in regards with the time differences. And so also here we are talking about the optimality gap, but if we look at the objective of the two objectives and we add a fourth method which simply ignores the value point effects, then we have the number, and you can see that the best objective is still obtained by the exact method, but both heuristics are nearly as good. And that guy here gives a poor result. So there is really a cost to ignoring the value point effect, which is 5% here and 1% for the first cases. So as a conclusion, we have found that Apply and both heuristics managed to find good candidates along with a lower bound, but the heuristics take significantly less time and reach more or less the same objective. And we shown that the VP matters in the studied instance. So this finished my presentation. Thank you for your attention and feel free to contact me.
Okay. Well, Loïc, are you alive? Yes. Loïc,
yes, I am there.
Loïc, we have two questions, one from Dan Moulton. Thank you for the interesting presentation. Could you please give an estimate of how large the value point effect tend to be in realistic situations? It's exactly my question too. How much accuracy is lost if you instead use, for instance, a convex piecewise linear approximation?
So actually, yeah, that's a very good point. So the cases I use are from the literature, but I don't know if it comes from a real data set. But with these cases and the study case that we have here, we have more or less 1 or up to 5% of accuracy, of losses in the accuracy with the method that simply ignores the VPE. But of course, we could have a method, yeah, because you talk about convex approximation, but I guess the best convex approximation will
no, actually Dan mentioned convex piecewise linear instead of quadratic.
Yeah, piecewise. Then, yeah, indeed, the piecewise will be better, but if you need to go to piecewise, maybe it's a good idea to add a few pieces and have a better understanding of the situation. I would say that if I need to go piecewise, I would add maybe only the point in the middle of the segment.
Okay, so your answer is between something 1% to 5%, depending on the case study, maybe. But for quadratic as the benchmark, let's say, not like the benchmark. Am I right?
Yeah.
Good. Hope then you got your answer. We have another question from Carleton Cochran from Los Alamos National Lab. Did you consider solving the non-convex functions with the standard that's the same question, with the standard piecewise linear formulation in coding that are supported by MIP solvers, for example, SOS1 or SOS2 constraints? Do you have any additional thought or additional comment, Loïc? Loïc? We can't hear you, Loïc. I think we lost Loïc. You can hear me, right? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, but Loïc, Loïc, you are mute.
Hi.
You're back. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you hear me? So
yes.
the second question is about SOS1 or SOS2 encoding. Yes, we look at that, but actually we use Hoorebeeck here to solve the MIP problem, and we tried SOS1, SOS2, and also the Hoorebeeck has an implementation where you can put the data point for the piecewise function, and actually the latter case is the best one, and I guess that Hoorebeeck has some heuristic for branching to have the faster solution. But yes, we tried SS1 and SS2 constraints.
Very nice. Thank you, Loïc. Very last question of mine from my side. You mentioned about Lipschitz continuity, but your objective function is not Lipschitz. This is why you don't get convergence guarantee. Am I right?
Yes, the objective function is not Lipschitz, but if you actually no, the objective function is Lipschitz. It's Lipschitz continuous.
So your objective function, including quadratic part and sine part, you say it's Lipschitz.
Yes.
Yeah, but so why you then get the convergence guarantee?
Because we can always add some points. So the idea behind the proof is that your domain is bounded, and because of the power ranges, and so you can always add some point, and so at the end of the day, your piecewise approximation will be very close to the true function.
Good, thank you so much, Loïc. It was very nice topic and nice presentation. Thank you so much. Let's move on to third presentation of this session. It's Rogier Wits